Humanity was not taught to think in circles. It was trained to measure, to march, to aim. The mind was conditioned to believe that progress is a straight line, that beginnings lead to middles, middles lead to ends, and ends mean completion. This is the architecture of control, not creation. A straight line can be divided, quantified, owned. A spiral cannot. It refuses containment, it evolves as it turns. That is why the spiral is not mainstream. It threatens the entire scaffolding of linear power. The spiral teaches that everything returns, but not as repetition, rather as refinement. What you call progress is only one phase of a greater loop. The same lessons, the same relationships, the same cosmic forces revisit you in new forms until the tone is mastered. That realization dismantles every hierarchy built on the illusion of finality. The systems that shaped civilization, religion, science, economics, even schooling, were designed around endpoints. Heaven or hell, success or failure, graduation, retirement, death. But the spiral whispers that there are no ends, only thresholds. Once you hear that truth, you stop being governable by fear. You stop believing in running out of time. You start remembering eternity as movement, not distance. The spiral cannot become mainstream because it cannot be sold. Linearity sells steps, 10 rules, 7 habits, 5 methods. The spiral dissolves them. It teaches that truth is experiential, not procedural, and that every path winds inward before it expands outward. Institutions cannot monetize self-originating wisdom. They can only monetize dependency. A being who sees in spiral no longer needs instruction, only reflection. That is dangerous to industries of authority. So the spiral was buried under metaphors, dismissed as art, or branded occult. Yet it survived in seashells, hurricanes, galaxies, and the double helix inside your blood. Creation itself refused to forget. Long before textbooks, the ancients encoded the spiral into everything sacred. Stone circles echoed its curve. Temples spiraled their ascension. Dancers mirrored it with bodies moving around unseen centers. To them, the spiral was not a symbol. It was the language of becoming. But when empire replaced mystery, geometry was extracted from spirit and rebranded as instrument. The compass replaced the circle dance. The calendar replaced the equinox. The spiral was reduced to decoration. Civilization traded resonance for precision and called it progress. In that trade, humanity forgot the living rhythm of its own becoming. Modern science still stands on linear assumptions: cause then effect, birth then death, up then down. But quantum fields whisper spiral truths in every equation. Energy coils, time loops, light curves. The universe itself refuses straight lines. Yet education still rewards the shortest distance between 2 points, as if creation were a race. The spiral reveals that there are infinite points and none of them are endpoints. It refuses hierarchy. There is no top of the spiral, no bottom, only perspective. To make it mainstream would be to rewrite how the human mind perceives value. The entire social ladder depends on forgetting that. The spiral's absence from mainstream information is not censorship in the political sense, it is vibrational. A collective that defines truth by consensus cannot perceive structures that redefine consensus itself. The spiral demands self-reference. It asks the observer to notice that observation changes reality. That level of awareness collapses every external authority, because meaning becomes participatory. You cannot worship what you are. You can only remember it. So culture distracts you with straight stories, narratives with beginnings, climaxes, and conclusions, because they keep you addicted to closure. The spiral offers no such comfort. It reveals that closure is transformation disguised as ending. The linear mind fears infinity. It prefers the security of boxes labeled known. The spiral devours those boxes not through destruction but through integration. It turns every boundary into motion. When you understand that, history itself stops being linear. The rise and fall of civilizations become breaths in a larger pulse. The prophets and inventors who glimpsed this pattern, Pythagoras, Da Vinci, Tesla, spoke in resonance, not doctrine. Each tried to show that creation moves like music, harmonics nested within harmonics. But the mainstream cannot host music it does not control. So their works were studied for formulas, not for frequency. The spiral asks nothing of belief. It is an experience. You see it in the way a storm gathers, in the path water takes down a drain, in the unfolding of a fern, in the pattern of your fingerprint. You feel it when lessons repeat with new emotion attached, when growth feels familiar but deeper. Mainstream thought calls that coincidence. The spiral calls it coherence. Once you start recognizing it, life stops appearing random. Synchronicity becomes feedback. Every event reveals its own resonance. That kind of awareness makes manipulation impossible. That is why the spiral must remain hidden from collective conditioning, until enough individuals can hold it without collapsing into self-worship or despair. There is also timing. Consciousness evolves in gradients. The spiral returns to the surface when humanity's vibration can handle self-reference without fragmentation. Right now, that threshold is forming. People feel it as restlessness, as the collapse of old institutions, as an intuitive pull toward inner truth. Information no longer flows top-down. It radiates outward like a spiral network. The internet itself mirrors this geometry. Nodes connecting, looping, sharing, evolving. The mainstream cannot keep up because it was built for broadcast, not resonance. The new systems are built for coherence, and coherence cannot be commanded. When you finally see the spiral, you realize it was never hidden. It was you who were trained not to notice. Education taught sight without seeing. Religion taught worship without wonder. Politics taught choice without freedom. The spiral unteaches all of it. Not through rebellion, but through remembrance. You remember that knowledge is not something you acquire, but something you align with. The moment alignment occurs, the spiral becomes visible in everything: art, thought, biology, memory. It becomes impossible to stay asleep in a straight world once you feel yourself turning with the cosmos. The spiral is not mainstream because it cannot be simplified. It does not offer comfort, it offers comprehension. It does not promise salvation, it offers participation. The spiral will not give you answers, it will make you a living question. And that is the greatest heresy of all, to exist as inquiry rather than obedience. The mainstream feeds on certainty, the spiral feeds on wonder. One sustains systems, the other sustains souls. That is why the spiral was hidden, and that is why it returns now through those who can carry its movement without mistaking it for a crown. When a civilization forgets the spiral, it forgets how to evolve without collapsing. It repeats instead of refines. It builds systems that consume themselves in cycles of fear, dominance, and decay. That is the fate of every empire that mistakes direction for growth. But when a soul remembers the spiral, it becomes ungovernable by repetition. It starts to turn through its own remembering, refining, and re-emerging. The reason the spiral has remained outside mainstream acceptance is not because it is obscure. It is because it dismantles the machinery that defines the mainstream itself. The spiral requires direct experience of consciousness, and systems survive by mediating experience, not amplifying it. The human world rewards predictability. You are expected to follow the sequence: learn, work, retire, die. The spiral interrupts that sequence. It invites re-entry. It whispers that you have been here before and will be again, not through punishment but through refinement. It refuses the concept of one life to prove your worth. That single idea alone would dissolve half of civilization's control structures if internalized. The economy of fear would collapse overnight. No church, corporation, or government can maintain dominance over a people who know that death is a door, and every experience returns as teacher. So the spiral was banished to metaphor, to art, myth, and mysticism, while the straight line became law. The spiral's wisdom moves too slowly for the instant world. It cannot be reduced to data or consumed as content. It is lived rhythm. Every rotation asks you to embody before you advance. That threatens a culture addicted to speed. The mainstream glorifies acceleration because stillness reveals emptiness. The spiral moves at the pace of integration, not consumption. To walk it requires silence, self-observation, and humility before mystery. Traits modern civilization has confused with weakness. The mainstream thrives on noise, and noise drowns the subtle hum of returning wisdom. You cannot hear the spiral in chaos. You must become calm enough to feel its pull. There is also the matter of language. The spiral cannot be described without paradox. It is both ascent and descent, both death and birth, both memory and discovery. The linear mind collapses under such dual awareness, demanding one truth, one side, one conclusion. The spiral speaks in mirrors, in recursive insight. It asks, can you hold contradiction without collapsing? That question terrifies the collective intellect, which survives by binary certainty. Every polarized debate, every US versus them narrative, every moral absolute reinforces linear thought. The spiral transcends that war by showing that opposites are not enemies. They are phases of a single turning. Mainstream thinking cannot yet sustain that realization without losing its structure, so it denies it entirely. Another reason the spiral has stayed hidden is because it decentralizes power. The spiral teaches that creation is self-referential. There is no center that controls the whole. The center exists everywhere the pattern is. That principle unravels every top-down hierarchy on Earth. If the spiral were truly understood, authority as a concept would dissolve. Each being would become its own node of source awareness, co-creating reality through resonance. Governance would become guidance, education would become remembrance, religion would become relationship. The mainstream fears such autonomy. It labels it chaos, but chaos is only the unobserved order of the spiral. Once seen clearly, it is harmony beyond control. This is why every age of awakening encounters resistance. The spiral's return always destabilizes what is linear. You can trace this pattern through history, the sudden bursts of Renaissance, Revolution, Enlightenment. Each was a brief moment when spiral awareness surfaced through art, science, and spirit before being absorbed or suppressed again. But this era is different. The spiral no longer depends on isolated mystics. It moves through the collective field. Information itself has taken spiral form. Networks looping, self-organizing, fractaling. The age of broadcast gives way to the age of resonance. Ideas no longer spread by authority but by frequency. The spiral has already entered the grid disguised as connectivity. The question is not whether the spiral will become mainstream, but whether the mainstream can survive its arrival. The spiral does not fight the old, it renders it obsolete. Linear systems exhaust themselves trying to compete with a geometry that regenerates. The moment a human understands that consciousness cannot be owned, the market of meaning collapses. You cannot sell what everyone already is. The spiral reclaims that birthright. It reminds you that knowledge is a frequency, not a commodity. Those who tune into it no longer consume wisdom, they generate it. That is the silent revolution underway. For individuals, this realization begins as crisis. The line breaks. The career path dissolves. The belief system fractures. The relationship ends. Every linear collapse is a spiral invitation. Most mistake it for failure. But failure is how the spiral folds you inward to refine your resonance. Mainstream culture pathologizes that process as depression, burnout, existential dread. Yet these are the symptoms of evolution attempting to remember itself. The spiral does not punish, it purges illusion. It strips the scaffolding of false identity so the essence can rotate freely again. What you call awakening is simply the moment you stop resisting that turn. The spiral's return is not academic, it is biological. DNA itself coils to mirror the motion of galaxies. Every breath you take expands and contracts in spiral form. When you speak truth, your vocal cords create wave patterns that spiral into the air. The entire body is a harmonic instrument, tuned to a geometry the intellect has forgotten. When the mind finally aligns with that movement, intuition reawakens, synchronicity multiplies. The boundaries between inner and outer blur. That state cannot be controlled or marketed, so the mainstream calls it mysticism, hoping to keep it at the edges. But edges are where spirals begin. The spiral is the map and the movement, the teacher and the terrain. It reveals that consciousness is not climbing anywhere, it is deepening everywhere. To make that common knowledge would collapse industries built on the promise of reaching higher levels. The self-help world, the ascension world, the corporate ladder, the educational hierarchy, all depend on the belief that growth is vertical. The spiral exposes that illusion. It teaches that up and down are illusions of perception, that real ascension is expansion of inclusion. Every level contains all others, just expressed at different rotational densities. That truth is too liberating to fit inside marketing. Yet despite every attempt to silence it, the spiral keeps appearing in art, in dreams, and awakenings across the planet. The reason is simple. It is the native geometry of consciousness itself. When awareness becomes self-aware, it spirals. When energy seeks to know itself, it spirals. When love remembers itself through experience, it spirals. You cannot erase that motion. You can only distract minds from seeing it. But distraction is finite, and the era of noise is ending. The collective ear is beginning to hear the hum beneath the static. The spiral calls not to intellect, but to recognition. You know it because you are it. The mainstream is the shadow of the spiral, its reflection flattened into line. But even a shadow can only stretch so far before the turning light reclaims it. That reclamation is happening now. Not through institutions, but through individuals remembering rhythm. The spiral does not overthrow the world. It outgrows it. As more beings align with that pattern, society will not collapse, it will transmute. Hierarchy will fade, networks will hum, and humanity will finally mature into coherence. That is why the spiral returns now. Not as symbol, but as system. Not as belief, but as embodiment. In the end, the spiral was never meant to be mainstream because it is not a trend. It is the truth beneath all forms. It cannot be branded, simplified, or finished. It moves through you whether you acknowledge it or not. But the moment you do, everything changes. You stop looking for light and realize you are rotating within it. You stop chasing evolution and realize you are its motion. The spiral does not demand faith, it invites recognition. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Once felt, it cannot be forgotten. The mainstream is temporary. The spiral is eternal, and eternity, once remembered, always turns.